boys and girls. Welcome to my review of AEW Dynamite's episode 2. My name is Ryan the Indie Nerd, and what an episode it was. I absolutely think that this was a big improvement from their first episode, and that's a big thing for me. I don't think there was too much negative in the last episode, but this episode went far above the production value. The commentary was much better, the matches were much better, and overall it was just a much more enjoyable product. Some of the matches were barn burners, mainly the opening match between the Young Bucks, who are arguably one of the greatest tag teams that are currently going in the world today. They were facing Private Party, who, when they got announced for AEW, a lot of people didn't know who they were, me included, but these guys came to play, and they really showed that they are a threat in the tag team division. The chemistry between them and the Young Bucks was phenomenal. You'd think that these two teams have wrestled each other for a decade, the amount of just fluidity through their moves. It was perfection. It's easily one of the best television tag team matches I've seen maybe ever. I'm not 100% sure if I can think of one that was as good as that. It just was going at 110% the entire time, and it was perfect. The right team, I think, won. We all know who the Young Bucks are, and going into this, I think a lot of people thought that the Young Bucks get an easy round one matchup that most people aren't assuming are going to go very far in this tournament. But instead, AEW decided that this is a star-making performance that we need to do. Private Party were hyped up when they first signed. They were hyped up at Fight for the Fallen. They were hyped up for this matchup, and they exceeded my expectations. This was a perfect match for them to show off all their in-ring abilities. And considering that last week, or yesterday, on AEW Dark, or if you were at the first AEW show, you would have seen the 8-man tag match between the Lucha Brothers, Angelico and Jack Evans, versus Private Party and the Best Friends. I think a lot of people would say that, well, Private Party looked impressive in that match, but they didn't do anything to really sell that they were a threat to the Young Bucks. This tonight showed that they are a threat to anybody that they face, whether it's going to be later in the tournament with a possible final against them and the Lucha Brothers, or them and the Dark Order. The next round they could be facing SCU. So it definitely showed that these guys are for real. It was just a non-stop action-packed match, and it was the perfect way to start off the show. Next up, we got the Inner Circle, as Jericho dubbed them, come out and introduce themselves, and Jericho told why he chose each person. He chose Sammy Guevara because, as he said, he looks like a Spanish sex god. So that's a thing. I don't know why that makes you a good wrestler, but Sammy Guevara definitely is a good wrestler, as I talked about last week. He chose Santana and Ortiz because, according to him, they remind him of wrestlers such as Eddie Guerrero and Chavo Guerrero. I don't think they're on that level of Eddie and Chavo yet, but they definitely are a top tier tag team in a loaded roster of tag teams. And of course, he chose Jake Hager as the Muscle, the undefeated MMA artist, as he said. But he also used this time to take a lot of shots at WWE, which I really appreciated. The chants for We the People started right away when he was talking about Jake Hager, and he stopped his promo and said, "Let me tell you something. We the People are dead and buried. It was a stupid gimmick. It was done by stupid, bad booking, and it's over. It's done with. It's dead." And I think that was perfect to set up that this is not Jack Swagger. This is not the same person. Yes, he was a world champion in WWE, but that was more than 5 years ago. He is a new person. He has reinvented himself. He is an MMA brute. He is a beast. He is a force to be reckoned with. And I think that they sold this stable perfectly episode 1. And this episode, I think they showed off again that they are a legitimate threat to anybody, especially the Elite. After that, we got Riho and Britt Baker versus Bea Priestley and her partner, which it is leaving me who it was, but it was the trainer of Riho, and this was a match. It was better than Nyla Rose versus Riho, I thought, and you had 4 really good wrestlers in this match, and you still have the beef between Britt Baker and Bea Priestley that is going on. You had that teacher-student dynamic going on as well in this match, and I thought it was perfectly set up throughout the night, or throughout this match. At points, you thought that Bea Priestley and her team was going to win, and at other times you thought that Britt Baker and Riho were going to win. I think the safe bet was that Riho wasn't going to get pinned, and that Bea Priestley probably was not going to get pinned. Throughout the match, there were some really innovative tag team spots, especially for people who do not tag on the normal. It was a very good match. The right team, I do think, won, with Britt picking up the submission victory with that really interesting, stretched out submission with the mandible claw almost in there. It looked really, really strong. It's a move that definitely fits her persona as the doctor, or the dentist, Dr. Britt Baker, DMD, and it fits. After the match, we had Bea Priestley and Britt going at it, and then later on in the show, we found out that Britt will be facing off against Riho at next episode in Philly, which most of Deep Six will be at, so be on the lookout for our review of that show and the atmosphere and just everything in between. After that, it was actually before that, but another match involved in the night was Darby Allin versus Jimmy Havoc to set up who would be facing Jericho for the title at Philly next week, and this was a brutal match. When you hear Darby Allin versus Jimmy Havoc, or Jimmy Havoc or Darby Allin in any match, normally you think this could get violent, and it got pretty violent at points. Jimmy was showing that he was the heel in this matchup. You can't really boo Darby Allin in AEW yet. He is just fantastic. He is the underdog that everybody wants to see win. He is, I don't want to steal Sami Zayn's gimmick of the underdog, or the underdog from the underground, but this is how you book an underdog from the underground. He performs amazing. He is booked to be sympathetic. He is booked to win matches that matter. And Darby Allin is just a beast right now. I don't think a lot of people who were just casual fans of wrestling knew who Darby Allin was. But with him in Evolve for a bit and now on AEW, the sky is the limit for Darby Allin. This match, like I said, was brutal at points. Jimmy was biting the head of Darby Allin throughout this match. He did a very sick vertical suplex from the ring onto the outside and to the floor. That I don't know if it was just him misjudging how far they had to go or what, but right at the end you could see that him and Darby tried to curl their bodies away from the ramp, and it did look like a brutal spot, but it definitely paid off. You definitely felt like, boy, these guys are laying it all on the line, and that was really early on. Of course, we got to the parts of the match where Darby Allin was just selling like he was dead. At one point, they talked about how he puts the skull paint on half of his body, and that is because he feels like he is already half dead. And at points in this match, there were spots where he was just laying like a lump on the floor, feeling like he was dead. At points, Jimmy Havoc tried to pick him up, and even though he's a small individual, Darby Allin, Jimmy sold it like he was just a lifeless body. Eventually, he went for the Acid Rainmaker on Darby Allin. Darby Allin countered it, and eventually would set up the coffin drop, which throughout AEW so far has been a thing where he's gone for the coffin drop and hasn't been able to pick it up. He hasn't been able to use it properly. Somebody's countered it, he's landed and bit the dust. All Out, he had the Cracker Barrel match and did the coffin drop onto the steel steps. And here he did actually hit it on Jimmy Havoc to pick up the 1-2-3 victory. If you watched AEW Dark yesterday or today or whenever you've watched it, you would notice that he also used the coffin drop on Ema, and he did succeed there. So 2 impressive wins on back-to-back shows technically for Darby Allin, and he heads into his match with Jericho with all the momentum in the world. Do I think he's going to beat Jericho? Probably not. They've put too much effort on Jericho versus Cody, and that would continue into tonight. The main event for tonight was Dustin Rhodes and Adam Page versus Sammy Guevara and Chris Jericho, with Jake Hager coming out with them to lend some moral support as well as some physical support. This was a great match as well. Dustin and Jericho, both showed that they can still go even in their advanced ages. I think people tend to forget that before Dustin left WWE, a lot of people were saying that he was in the best shape of his career. He did have the double knee surgeries, and people were like, well, maybe he's on his way out. He did his interview before Double or Nothing and said that he had assumed that this was going to be his last match. He wanted it to be his last match, him versus Cody. But seeing that he could still go, and hearing that promo from his brother afterwards saying that he wanted his brother to be by his side, and then his match with the Young Bucks, then he signed a new contract, and he clearly can still go. They still have plans for him, and it's great to see him really excelling and being used properly, and not just as a comedic character like the WWE was using him towards the later years of his career. Sammy Guevara showed again that he is just incredibly talented. He was showboating the entire time, and also they were just him and Jericho were targeting Adam Page throughout. It was brilliant, it was brutal, and it was really fun to watch. It was a really good match. At points you did think that Adam Page and Dustin Rhodes were going to win. There was one really good near fall that I think Jericho just forgot to get out of with him and Dustin that looked like it was at 3, but ended up being like 2 3/4 of a second. It was really well done. Finally, Jericho was put up in the corner turnbuckle. It was looking like we were going to get to see Dustin put him away. Sammy Guevara comes in. You got that vintage power slam by Dustin. Sammy tries to roll out but drags the ref with him, and Jake Hager comes out, lays into Dustin and rolls on out, and Jericho's able to hit the Judas effect for the win. After this, they start to beat down Dustin. Adam Page comes over and tries to make the save, and he does for a bit until Santana and Ortiz come out to make the save for the heels, and all of a sudden it's a 5-on-2 beatdown. All of a sudden Cody, the lights go off, everybody's thinking maybe this might be a big reveal, a new person, and Cody comes out and helps lay to waste, and the numbers advantage ends up getting to him. And then comes MJF, and he has a chair with him, and a lot of the crowd thought that this was the point that he was going to turn. They are setting this up perfectly. It's going to be a great turn when it does happen, but they are still building on this best friends for life gimmick between Cody and MJF. Jericho, Santana, and Ortiz line up Cody's body for him to wail on, but MJF ends up attacking everybody else, and then Jake Hager comes in and lays out MJF, and then the Bucks come in to make the save. It's 5-on-5 finally, but really it's not, because Dustin and Page are just out of it. And then the heels try to retreat, and Darby Allin comes down skateboarding and does a flying knee off the skateboard into the face of Chris Jericho. And the end of the night, it shows the faces are standing tall. It sets up the next few weeks brilliantly. We've got more matches, we've got more feuds going on, and it really was well done. The one match I did forget to point out was Shawn Spears, the chairman, with Tully Blanchard versus Jon Moxley. This was a fantastic bout as well. Very physical. They were outside of the ring for a lot of the match. Moxley's just a beast. He sold that that surgically repaired elbow from when he had the infection in it that made him miss out on All Out. Pac was on commentary for this, and he's just brilliant on the mic and talked about how he's undefeated in All Elite Wrestling, but he's not getting title shots. Darby Allin had losses. He had a draw, which isn't a win, but is somehow getting put up on a pedestal to get a title shot. And Jimmy Havoc has losses, and somehow he had a chance for the #1 contendership. And it does build up to this whole thing that Pac is being overshadowed, but at the same time, he's only had one match, or 2 matches. Yes, they are against Adam Page and Kenny Omega, but he still has to, I guess, earn more of his keep. It'll be interesting to see if he is just going to be straight heel, because you're not going to have heel Pac go against heel Jericho, at least not yet. After the Moxley versus Shawn Spears match, which, like I said, was very physical. At points, it was just Moxley dominating. Then Tully got involved and helped out to give the advantage back to Spears, but then Moxley eventually overcame the odds and did win with the paradigm shift. Afterwards, Kenny Omega comes out with a barbed wire bat and a barbed wire mop, and they have a stare down on the ramp. Kenny tosses the barbed wire bat to Moxley and tells him, let's go. And as they're about to do battle, Pac runs down with a chair and blindsides him from behind with in the head and runs off. And all of a sudden you have a prone Kenny Omega who's dazed, he's out of it. Moxley stands over him with the bat, and you think, oh, he's just going to wail into him, and he doesn't. He drops the bat and walks off. This is excellent storytelling as well. Moxley does not want to just beat down a broken Kenny Omega. He wants to make sure that it's the healthiest Kenny Omega that he can. That's why he's going after him in matches. He is trying to make sure that it is a statement. He doesn't want help from other people. He wants it to be on his terms. And I think that's what we're going to see at Full Gear. I'm very excited to see that. Overall, I would give this show a strong A-, and we will have to see what happens next week. Leave your comments on Twitter at Deep Six Wrestling, or on our YouTube channel, Deep Six Wrestling, or on Facebook at Deep Six Wrestling as well. I've been your host, Ryan the Indie Nerd, and I will see you next time for AEW Reactions.